It's your open source advocate and I'm back, and today I wanted to talk about another NVR system called iSpy. So in the past I've talked about Frigate, and I've talked about Shinobi, and I've talked about Motion iOS, and we've talked about ZoneMinder, and there's lots and lots of opinions out there about all of these different systems. The one thing that I love about all of them is that they're free and open source software. That's no different for iSpy. Now, iSpy does have some paid add-ons, some things that you can do that they ask for money for, but that keeps the open source part going. So understand that and know that. And know that the add-ons are not things you just have to have in order to use it. It's just a nice convenience to have them. So we'll kind of talk about that as well. If you come to the iSpyConnect.com, this is the address, the web address here, iSpyConnect.com. You'll see that they've got what we call their agent DVR, and that's what we're going to install today, and we're going to install it in Docker, but you have it available on Windows, Mac, Linux, and ARM systems, which is pretty nice. Now, I'm going to say this. A lot of people love to run things on the Raspberry Pi. I have not tried to run this on a Raspberry Pi, but I'm going to guess that it's pretty similar to other software where you're running a DVR. It's probably CPU intensive. Depending on how you set up your streams from your cameras, and you kind of need to understand your cameras, and you need to understand what those streams do to understand what kind of CPU you need in order to run those things. But a lot of times something like a Google Coral or some other kind of specialized USB device can help you offload that work and actually make the most out of the device that you've got. So that might be something you could do with this. I am just running this straight up on Docker on a fairly beefy system today, so I think it's going to be fine, and I'm only going to add 4 cameras. It's the same 4 cameras we added to ZoneMinder. It's the only 4 cameras that I've got right now. I do intend to add some more cameras over time, so we'll kind of see how that handles it. But yeah, right now, just understand you can run this on Windows, Mac, Linux, and ARM-based devices. Now, not all ARM devices are the same either. Not all of them are Raspberry Pi. Some of them are a little bit more powerful, some less powerful. So just kind of understand that and know that when you go into this. So we're going to talk about how to get this thing installed. We're going to talk about all the things you can do with it. But right here you can see it says cameras, recording, sensors, which I'm not going to really set up anything as far as that goes, but there are alerts, and you can set up alerts based on motion. They do have integrations that you can get in there and set up, like IFTTT, DeepStack AI, just so many things that you can kind of run there, license plate readers and so on. So that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty great when you're talking about an open source project that has those kind of integrations built in. And then you've got remote access options. Now, we can do this in multiple ways, but again, their iSpy Connect offering is part of that paid offering that can give you remote access and access through your mobile device. So understand that as well. If we jump over to the downloads page, what you're going to see is a video surveillance software title, and then you'll see the download agent DVR, and it'll give you the version number. Now, it may be newer if you're watching this video months or years and after I've made it. So understand, things may change. You need to check out the documentation to make sure you know what you're doing when you're installing this. It's great to follow my tutorials. It's great to go look at my show notes because I'll give you exactly what I'm doing right now, and that way you know what's going on. But things can change over time, so be prepared for that. So right here you can see some of the things you can run it on. You've got Windows, Mac, Linux, Raspberry Pi, Docker, which we're going to do today. You have IFTTT integrations. I think this is Home Assistant. We've got Alexa, I believe. This is iOS, and then you've got Android as well. So you got a lot of stuff that you can really do with Agent DVR. And it tells you it's a super advanced video surveillance platform for Windows, macOS, Linux, etc., etc. I'm not going to read all that to you, but as you move down, you'll find this tabbed interface. So if you're running Windows and you want to install the Agent DVR in Windows, they give you the download right here. You can just go through the steps, and it'll kind of give you a couple of different things as far as updating versus just fresh install. Same thing if you're going to go over here and kind of try to do this thing with macOS and Linux, RPi. So these all have kind of a bash command that's going to run a curl command. So you'll need to have those things installed, but you can get it set up that way as well. Docker, which is what we're going to do today. And then you've got the list of plugins for things too. So you can go check out the plugins and kind of see what's going on. When somebody suggested iSpy to me, it was Scott over at Scottabite. He said, hey, have you checked out iSpy? And I had looked at iSpy years ago, and I was like, oh, it's Windows only. That's not going to work for me. I didn't have any Windows machines. So when he told me that, I was kind of like, what, really? So it threw me off a little bit, but I did go check it out, and I'm glad he told me about it because it's pretty great, pretty cool software, and we're going to go through it. But it does run on all these platforms now, so that's why there's a difference in the versioning. So if you scroll down, you'll see this higher version, but this was their Windows-only stuff that they had before. Now this is the version that they have for their cross-platform stuff. It's a lower number, but it's I believe, newer software. So we're going to get into the installation of this right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my patrons over at Patreon and my subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much for all of your support. I love doing this channel. I love making this media and this content for you. I hope you enjoy it as well. I do post all of the videos now over at Patreon after one of my patrons made the suggestion, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me before that. But if you're interested in seeing them through Patreon and getting a notification through Patreon instead of through YouTube, or hoping that YouTube's algorithms happens to show it to you, jump over and become a supporter on Patreon, patreon.com. I've got the links in the description and the show notes. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Alright, so to get started, you're going to go down and you can look at their Docker run command right here. But what I did was I took this and turned it into a Docker compose command. I just preferred to run it that way. But you can actually run it either way. If you want to run it as a Docker run, they've got it set up here for you. And it'll do multi-line the way they've got it set. That's why you see these little backslashes here. So if you copy this and paste it, it should go to multi-line, or you can separate it right after these backslashes to make it multi-line if you want. I'm going to use the Docker Compose command that I set up, and the nice thing about that is you can set that up to run in Docker Compose if you just want to do it straight from the terminal, but if you're running Portainer, you can also run it as a stack. So I'll show you guys how to do both of those things on my systems today, and that way you'll kind of see both ways of doing it and how to get it set up and running. It's really, really not overly difficult, but you do need to kind of follow the template that I'm setting up for today. So I'll have that out there in the show notes, and you can get a hold of that Docker Compose command as well, so that you can use that. And again, you can use it as Docker Compose, just straight up Docker Compose, or you can use it as a stack in Portainer. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Portainer instance. And here you can see I've got multiple Portainer instances where I run basically the local Portainer, and then I've got agents running on the rest of these machines. But we're going to use this machine right here, and we're going to go over to stacks, and I'm going to say add a new stack. And I'll zoom this up for you guys that are on your phones. So I'm going to name this iSpy, just because it doesn't want any capital letters, but you can use hyphens. And then I'm just going to paste in my Docker Compose code here. So this will be a little bit different from what I have set here, but you can see that there's a version 3. We're going to use the image right here, and it's going to be iSpy agent DVR. And then it's got iSpy as the container name. You can change this to any name you want, as long as it's lowercase, basically, I think. And then the time zone, you'll want to change this to your time zone. Mine is America/Chicago, but you'll want to change this to whatever time zone you live in. On the volumes, we are definitely going to change these today. And what you want to do is set this up so that it's in a volume where you're going to have your config where you can find it. So on my system, it's /home/Brian/Docker, and then I'm going to create a folder called iSpy agent. And then down here for media, I don't want to save that in my iSpy agent location. I want to save it in a location that'll hold more media, so I want to save it in a mounted folder. So I'm going to use /mount/file sync, and then I'll create a folder called iSpy, and we'll leave it in there. Finally, we have the app data again, so we're going to take this out for our commands folder, and we're going to put this in the same place that we put our config. Let's see. Or we're going to put it in the same place for our media XML, I'm sorry. So we're going to do /home/Brian/Docker/iSpy agent, and then /commands. So this all should work okay. We have agent commands. Let's call this one /media, just like that. So we'll go out and we'll create these folders here in just a minute so that we have everything where we need it to be. And then we're going to set up these ports. Now, 8090 is not in use on my systems today, so I'll just leave this port mapping. But if you have 8090 in use already, you'll want to change this left side of the colon to some port on your host that is not currently in use. If you have 3478 already in use, you'll want to change the left side of the colon to a port that is not already in use. Just don't change the right side of the colon. Leave this stuff alone. If you have these ports already in use on your system for some other reason, then you'll want to change this range. But right here, you want to leave it alone. If you can leave this alone, it's probably best to do that, just because this looks like it does some kind of communication to this port that I'm not sure what it is. These two, probably okay. But we're going to go ahead and just set these up, and we're going to let it kind of run the way that it's set right here. Now, before we deploy this, I want to go make sure that I have these actual locations set up that I've set here in my volumes. So I'm just going to open up my terminal, and I'm going to SSH over to my machine. And I'm just going to show you what I have in my Docker folder here. And this is on the remote machine where I'm setting all that stuff up. So I'm just going to say ls And actually, yeah, so we've got Docker. Yes, good. So we've got that set. So we want to create a folder inside of Docker called iSpy agent, and then a folder inside of that called media, and then a folder inside of that called commands. So we're just going to go over here and set those up in the terminal. And the way we can do that, we can do it with one command. We can do mkdir-p, and then we're going to call this iSpy agent. And then we're going to put a slash, and then we're going to use a curly brace, and we're going to put media, a comma, and then we're going to put commands, and then a closed curly brace. So what this is going to do is it's going to create any of these folders in this structure that don't exist. So in this case, iSpy agent doesn't exist, and neither do these folders, so it's going to create those for us. So I'm just going to hit that. And now we can do an ls of iSpy agent, and you can see that inside there we have commands and we have media. So we should be pretty good to go as far as our setup for this part. Now we need to set up that other piece, which is where we want the data, the recordings to actually be stored. So I'm just going to cd into /mount file sync. And you'll see I've got a couple of things here. I've got Frigate, where I'm saving some Frigate videos, and I'm going to do this one in the future. And it's straight up through Docker instead of through Home Assistant this time. And then C file data, you can see I've got that where I've got my data sync happening. So right here, I'm just going to create another directory, and I'm going to call this iSpy. And let me make sure I spell everything the same. Yeah, just iSpy, and then that's it. So I'm going to create that folder, make sure everything there looks good. I have to do sudo on this one. There we go. And then I'm going to do an ls-al. And you can see here all these folders are owned by root, so it should be fine the way it's going to work with Docker. We'll find out. If there's any issues getting to it, we'll come back and change folder permissions, and I'll show you guys how to do that. So I'm just going to clear that for now, and we'll just go to CD back to the home. And I don't think we need anything else here on this system right now. I will show you though. In fact, let's do this. Docker iSpy. And if you want to do this with Docker Compose, so we set this up back here for stacks. It's the same exact file. Once you make these changes, it's the same thing. So I'm just going to copy that text the way that we've changed it. And inside of this folder, I'm going to do nano docker-compose.yml. This is the file we want to have. And I'm going to paste that in with Control-Shift and V like Victor. And there's my YAML file. I'm going to save with Control-O. And then enter, and then I'm going to use Control-X to exit out of Nano. So now if I do an ls, you can see I've got my two folders plus my Docker Compose file. To run this Docker Compose file, all you have to do at this point is do docker-compose and then up-d, just like this. If I run this, it's going to go pull down iSpy agent and run it, everything like that, exactly like it's going to do right here in this stack. I'm just not using a Portainer stack to do it. I'm using Docker Compose instead. So you can do it either way. It is completely up to you how you run this. You now have both ways of getting this text into the file or the location you want, and you can do it in a stack in Portainer, or you can do it in a Docker Compose file in the terminal. Completely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and do it from a stack here in the terminal. So I'm going to hit deploy. It's going to take a minute because in the background it's doing exactly what Docker Compose does, which is go pull down the image, get everything extracted, get it ready to run, and then start that thing running with all of the stuff that we set on it already as far as the port mappings and the volume mappings. So it takes just a little bit of time, just like always, because it's downloading something fairly large over the internet, so just give it time. Alright, we've got the green check mark that says that that stack should be up, and it's right here, and it shows that it is. So we're going to jump over to our containers area, and we're just going to look for iSpy, which is right here, and we're going to click on the logs. So we're just going to click on this little icon here, and you see there's no logs really. It's not putting anything out. That's okay. Maybe there's just no logging that happens whenever this container gets done. And we're going to go to the IP address of our host machine. And then we're going to put a colon, and we're going to go to 8090. This is a good sign. If you see this pop up and this kind of working thing, that means that it's running and it's trying to get everything ready. So right here it wants to know the language that we're going to use. In my case it's English, but if you're not an English speaker, here are all the other languages that they offer. Hopefully one of these will fit your needs if you need it. I'm just going to keep it on English. I'm going to hit OK. The next thing is it says, hey, you should turn on microphone and audio basically through your browser so that you can use some of the features built into iSpy. Because if you have two-way cameras, you can actually utilize that if the iSpy software supports it for your camera. So that could be useful. So just make note of that they're telling you like, hey, you should do this. So we're going to click OK. We're going to let this thing kind of finish up. and it says here's your help, and it gives you little tutorial links of videos of how to do things. So if you click on this one, it's going to open up a video and it's going to start playing and so on. Now I'm not going to open those up. We'll kind of go through the setup together, but just know that this is here and it comes up right away when you first set this thing up. Oh, and if you click up here, you see some other options. You can go to user interface, live video. So this is just different ways that you can get to things that are here in the background. I'm just going to click on OK, and you'll see there's no cameras. There's nothing here yet. Now, if you want to add a camera, you just click in this open space and it's going to bring up this wizard to add a camera. And we're going to go through adding a camera here in just a minute. So before we try to add a camera, I do want to show you some of this stuff. So up here at the top, you've got some navigation, and just kind of notice the navigation that you've got there. So up here, I'm going to click on this kind of hamburger menu looking thing. And you'll see here that it brings up some settings. Now, if you look at like remote access and logs, if you click, the logs is going to bring you to your logs for the system, so that's great. You can go here and kind of check out the logs that you've got going. Now that opened up in a new tab, so we can go just close that. If you click on remote access, it's going to bring you to this thing that says connect your account. So this is where it starts talking about iSpy Connect. So it tells you all of the things that you can get by basically setting up iSpy Connect, and then there's this and more kind of thing that says there's more stuff beyond that. If you click on the connect button, it's going to take you to a page to basically connect up your DVR to your iSpy Connect account, which just makes it easier to get some of this stuff set up and running. So just know that. Again, this is a paid thing. I don't think it's very much, but something for you to look at if you really like this software and you want to do some extras. It is here. There is an option. So I'm just going to click on OK. So there's new device. We're going to use this one a lot. Then you can edit devices once you've set them up. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because I know it's really small. There's edit devices. There's copy the settings from one device to another. There's backup and restore, always important whenever you're doing something that takes configuration and setup and things like that. Then you have your settings area. You've got your file upload, profiles, plugins, commands. I mean, just so many different things. So if we just click here on settings, you'll come to the settings area, and the name of it is agent. That's what's showing right here. You can change this to kind of be whatever you want. The max CPU is 90%. Completely up to you whether you want to allow that to be 90%, 80%, 20%, whatever. But just understand, whatever you give it, that's what it's going to try to use if it needs it. So if you set up any kind of schedule, this is saying apply that schedule as soon as it starts. I would say just leave this on unless you're just not going to use a schedule at all. Turn it off, that's fine. Notify on disconnect, you can turn this on. You just need to set up the notification stuff here, which is set up with email. So here's your storage email address. Here's your notify trigger times. You have a lot of different things that you can set up. So you can say, here's my notify trigger, basically flexibility. Here's the email interval, how often it should send out an email. Here's storage interval. VLC directory, if you're going to use VLC for anything in the background, you'd want to set up your VLC directory so the software knows how to get to that. I'm not going to be doing that today. Add this to a database. And then max log size is 1000. You can change this if you want more entries in your log. And then FFmpeg log level is right now quiet. You can change this to be different. So you can set this to panic, fatal, error, warning, info, verbose, and so on, trace. So verbose means you're going to get a lot of logging. Some of these things will give you more logging than others. So just understand, depending on what you're looking for will be dependent on what you would set your logging to. For now, we're going to leave it as quiet because everything should be okay. And then experimental features on or off. Right now it's off. If you turn it on, it's going to let you see some other features that may be there for experimental purposes. But right now I'm just going to leave it on a stable system. I'm going to leave it as off. So I'm going to cancel out of that. I'm not making any changes right now. If we come back down, you'll see there's file upload and then there's profiles. So here's my home profile, kind of the way that you want things to work, away, night, and this is not user profiles. This is really profiles for your usage of the system. So I just wanted you to see that as well. So we'll come right back down. There are plugins. Again, this is part of that Connect software. So that Connect setup where you want to get extra plugins and things like that going, you can do that through their system. So just be aware of that. You've got commands. So if you want to run commands, you can. I'm just going to hit cancel for that. If you want any of these types of integrations, I think you also need the iSpy Connect. If you click on Alexa, there it goes. It takes you back to the Connect. I'm pretty sure all of these have that, even Home Assistant, back to the Connect. So it's not just straight up do this wherever you want to kind of thing. It uses the iSpy Connect system to basically get you back to your other systems and bridge those devices together. Alright, so we're going to click OK on this. We're going to left click here on the background and you'll see it pops up. It says camera view. So configure a view. This is the view 0. You can see right here it's one grid. Set up 2 grids, column plus grid, left plus main. So you can kind of set this up to give you different views of things, and you have different views that you can set up, and they're basically set up with numbers at first, but you can rename those as well. So we're going to go ahead and click OK on this. And if you look down here, you'll see you get these different views that you can choose from by hitting on the little 9 box there. And you can see it goes all the way down to 9, and here's the default view as 0, so you could change the default view if you wanted to as well. And then if you want to cycle through the views, you can basically say cycle through the views. And this is how often it would cycle. So you can set this to 5, 10, 15, 20. If you want to edit the views, we can just click on the edit button as well, just like we left clicked on the main part of the screen. The same way it worked either way. Didn't have to do anything special to get here. Just click on that button. Here you have the microphone where if you have that functionality, you could speak out through your cameras by using this system. I have not tested that yet. I will have to try it with the cameras that I have. I'm not sure that they'll actually do it. If you have PTZ and it's functioning, then you can toggle your PTZ controls. These are nice looking little controls, by the way. So you can see that they pop up with their nothing showing as well. So they're there. You can pop them open anytime, but setting them up to work with the cameras is a different story. So up here we have live video, which is what we're looking at now. You have your time machine, timeline, recordings, photos, floor plans, and virtual reality. Alright, let's get into setting up a camera. Alright, we're going to go up to this menu here, and we're going to move down to New Device. And you'll see right away it doesn't really have anything. It just says, you know, select a display slot. There's really not anything else to select, so we can just click on the plus. Now you have several different ways to add your cameras. So the IP camera wizard, OnVIF is another one. Video source, so if you have different kind of video source other than IP or OnVIF. You can also add a sound source, so an audio source, so you can basically monitor audio sources if you have mics laid around in different places. You can basically trigger events based on what those microphones pick up. It's not something I've used yet, but it's an interesting concept for sure. And then of course you can copy a device that you already have and then make edits to it to basically clone it, I guess. We're just going to go to IP Camera Wizard. And first of all, it's got alerts turned off. It's got record on detect turned off. So we'll probably turn that on. We'll go ahead and turn on alerts, even though right now we're not really going to have any alerts set up. And then resize, I'm not going to do any resizing right now. And record raw, and the only reason I do this is that it makes larger files, but it's less CPU intensive. So when you're not running with like some kind of specialized thing like Google Coral or other devices like that, you might want to use the record raw. Now it does take up more drive space, so just be aware of that. It's not going to compress the video. It's going to record whatever the stream is coming in. But I think a lot of streams are H.264 these days, so it's already fairly well compressed anyways. But it keeps the CPU from having to do any kind of compression, which can really reduce how much CPU you're using on the system. So just be aware of that. If you want it to compress or you want to choose compressions, then you can just turn this off and basically let it do that. But I'm going to turn that on so it's ready to go. We're just going to click OK. And the first thing it wants to know is what is the make of the camera. So I'm going to put in Railink because I know that's what it is. And mine is a 410, I think it's a 410 just plain. I don't think it's the S or the W. So we're going to go with that and we'll kind of see what we have. I'm going to put in my camera username and then my camera password. The channel, I'm just going to leave it alone for now. It's not something we need to change. This is only if you're going to be using it from like a DVR of some kind. And then we're going to click next. Don't click this button. Make sure you click the next button here for the wizard. And then it's going to ask you for the IP address. So in my case, it's the subnet of .10, and I need to find out for sure what, I think it's 148, but let me double check. I was way off. It is 232. So we're going to do this one first. So it's going to go out there and it's going to basically probe that camera to find out like what streams do you have available. And this is really cool because this is not something I've seen on the other ones. There are probe functions on Shinobi. It kind of works. It kind of gives you some information back that you can use to kind of pre-set up all the configuration of the camera, but there's still a lot of stuff you need to set in there for sure. ZoneMinder, I never got the OnVIF probe to work correctly. I just did it all manually, and I used the ZoneMinder forums to get the information. But again, it all came out pretty well. MotionEye tends to be able to pick up RTSP streams as long as you know the stream URL, which is what you're getting here. But again, you have to go look up documentation and kind of find places where people say, here's the stream that you can use. In this case, I liked it. It finds this and it kind of gives me some different options, and you can kind of see what it's looking for here. So some of these are RTMP, and some people say with the Railink cameras, especially like the 4K and high def cameras, that RTMP tends to give you a better stream because there's no tearing and things like that. So you might consider using one of those if that's what you're trying to get out of it. So there's the main and then there's the sub. So usually main is a higher definition video, and then sub is a lower definition video. So depending on what you're trying to record, you might want to record the main and you might want to view the sub because it might stream better. We might pick main here in just a minute, but you can see there's RTSP. There's quite a few here, and it goes by, you know, different things to show you H.265, H.264. So lots of different streams that we could use. Now it may just be building these things, but I think it probes for these things. But look at this list. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we're going to go back up here to the top, and I'm going to try the RTMP, and I'm just going to do the main, and we're just going to say use that. And let's just see if it actually gives us any video feed here in a minute. So it's given us a place to add the camera name, but I want to see if I actually get a feed here in the background in a minute. We'll go ahead and name it while we're waiting. So this is my driveway, and it's on the southeast side of my house. Location, I haven't set up any locations in the system. There's no groups set up yet, but you can set those things up if you want to kind of group things together. If you have like 10, 12, 15 cameras, it might be worthwhile to set these up, you know, more cameras than that even. Source type is IP camera. Yeah, unfortunately decoder is CPU. I don't have a GPU and it's not VLC, so the camera is enabled. You can set the camera on a schedule. I'm going to leave this on even though I'm not going to set a schedule right now, but just know that there is scheduling you can set for the camera as well, so that if you know there's going to be activity in front of that camera during certain parts of the day and you don't want it to be, you know, recording all of that all the time, then you can set that schedule so that it doesn't do that. If you have MQTT events set up for that camera, you could turn this on and set up those configurations as well. The max frame rate, I'm just going to leave this at 10. Now you can change this. You can make this a much higher frame rate. It really depends on the bandwidth you have for that camera to use. So be aware that if you're getting really choppy video, you might lower the frame rate and it might actually help. So 10's okay. I mean, I'm not trying to see like a high definition movie, you know, 4K movie up on a big screen or anything. I just want to, you know, see motion and get things recorded. And a lot of times this is the streaming rate, and the record rate is much better. Resize, I'm just going to leave that off. You can set it if you want to kind of resize and scale everything. Image correction, again, if you want to do that, you can. This is nothing that I really know much about, so I'm not going to mess with that right now. If you need to flip the camera, so if you had to mount it upside down for some reason, then you could do this here. If you need to rotate it, so flip means it's going to give you kind of the mirror image of what you would normally see. Rotate means you can rotate by degrees. So if you wanted to turn the camera over, you could set this to 180 and it would rotate it around 180 degrees. If you had to set the camera at a 90-degree angle for some reason, you could rotate the video just so it shows at a 90-degree angle, and so on. Overlay image, if you wanted one, you could set those up, and then you can basically select these. It's nothing that I have set up right now. Then you have the fill mode. So there's default, center, and fill. I'm just going to leave it on default. And then the color. This color is kind of like a border that goes around the video. Whenever it detects motion, it'll turn that border on and kind of blink so that you notice like, hey, this camera's got something going on. It's got some kind of event happening. So you can basically just click on this and pick whatever color you want if you don't like this default picture. It's just a way to separate out the cameras and kind of have a mental idea of, oh yeah, green is this camera. Let me check it. So that's really it. Nothing special there. And I'm just going to say okay. Okay, it helps if you have the correct password for your cameras. That would definitely be one of my issues. So I'm just going to go ahead and type this in again. We're going to let this thing look for the stream. I'm going to go with just the H.264 substream, I guess. And we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And everything else is done. I'm going to hit enable. Yeah, there we go. Now we've got a stream going here in the background. So this is kind of where you end up. And this is our first camera. So if we want to edit this, like I said, anywhere on the camera area, just right click and it'll bring up everything you need. And if you look, there's a drop down menu here of things that you can change and add and configure about this. So not only the camera, but all of the other things that you want to set up. So basically actions, the general information is where we start. You've got actions, you've got alerts, you've got audio, you've got cloud if you're doing any kind of cloud stuff. You've got detectors, facial recognition, FTP. So there's a lot of stuff. Now, these detectors and facial recognition, as you start adding these things on, this is going to use up more processing power. So understand that. If you want to do detectors and facial recognition on like 30 cameras, you better have a really beefy system to do that, or you better have several devices that will help take the load off of the CPU. You better have some good GPUs or something like that to really help with that stuff. So be aware of that. You do have FTP that you can set up so that you can push the recordings over. There's masking, so you can mask certain areas out that you don't want to be detecting motion in, or you can mask in certain things. There's object recognition. You can do photos. You can set up picture-in-picture if you need to. The plugins that you saw earlier are really part of the iSpy Connect. Then you've got pan tilt zoom. So if you have a pan tilt zoom camera, as long as they have some kind of support for that PTZ camera built in, you should be able to get that set up. And sometimes cameras will use the same PTZ as another model, so just kind of knowing that will help. I don't have any pan tilt zoom cameras to test with, but I have seen that they have a nice list of pan tilt zoom supported cameras, so you can kind of check that out and see what it looks like. Then you have your recording setup. So this one's kind of important if you're going to be doing recording. You want to know, like, where am I recording? Why is it recording? So right now I've got it set on detect. So if it detects motion, it's going to record a clip. And then you kind of run down through here and tell it what you want to do. So the raw record, again, is less CPU intensive. It has GPU, use GPU. I don't really have a GPU, but I'll leave it on. I mean, it'll take a little bit off of the CPU probably. Then you have your date format. So if you want to have the clips added with a date, then you can set up kind of the format of what you want that file name to be by using this type of formatting. Your max frame rate for recording. So you could set this higher for your recording or lower, just depending on how you want it to work. The max record time, so this is in seconds, so 900 seconds, I think that's 15 minutes, so that's the maximum amount of time that it'll record, so about 15 minutes. Now, if you don't want this to be on detect, by the way, if you want to just record all the time, you can do manual and just click on record and it'll record from then on. So just be aware of that. The minimum record time is 15 seconds, so it just depends on kind of what you set up as far as everything as for the timers and motion and detection and all that kind of stuff. It'll all mix together to kind of give you the recordings you're looking for. The inactivity timeout, which is basically once there's no motion or action, stop recording, and that's for about 8 seconds. So when there's no motion for about 8 seconds, it'll stop recording, and then the next time it sees motion, it'll start a new clip. You have a buffer area that you can set as well, and then you can set your recording quality to higher, lower, or the middle. And I just kind of leave it in the middle. It generally turns out pretty good. The other one that you will be wanting to look at is going to be your storage. So there's a schedule as well. So if you don't want it to record during certain hours or things like that, you can set that here. But then your storage is important. So remember, we set up our storage. We want to make sure that we're getting our storage in the right place. It should be in the right place because this is where we map. This is that mapped volume on the Docker side. Just double check it that it's the right place and everything. So when you set up your cameras for the storage, it gives it kind of a folder with a weird name. So you can just change this to be whatever you want. So in my case, I can put driveway southeast, and that'll be my folder name for the recordings for this camera. So instead of deleting files whenever the drive starts to get more full, or whenever it runs out of the time frame you say to keep them for, you can archive them instead of deleting them. I prefer to delete them over time. If you want to archive them, you can. You just want to make sure you have plenty of storage to keep that archive. Management. You can turn this on if you want to. It's nothing that I think we really need as far as the management of that goes. The maximum size, basically how large can your folder get? So 1024 megabytes, so that's 1 gig. So if you wanted to increase that to 10 gigs, you could basically do 1024 times 10, which is this. Add a 0 to the end, and now you've got 10 gigs of space for those recordings in that folder. The maximum age is hours, so this is 72 hours or 3 days. So again, you can change this to be longer or shorter. Just do 24 times however many days or hours you want, and you will be set up for recording and keeping those recordings for that many days. Once you've set up your storage, your recording, and your camera, you're really pretty much ready to go. You can just click on OK, and everything should be set. I don't think there's any motion going on in my driveway right now. Now this looks a little bit blurry. My camera is actually a better camera than this is giving. But again, we've got the quality set down a little bit as well. So we're kind of using I think we're using the substream here, which it's not as high a quality, but you can record from the mainstream if you want to. But if we go look here and we say, are there any recordings yet? There's nothing yet because there's no motion happening. So we'll go ahead and add another camera. So we'll go back to the live view, and it'll automatically kind of adjust here in a minute. So we're going to do new device, and I'm going to go find my other camera's information. I'm just going to click in the middle, IP camera wizard. We're going to do the same thing as before. Just check the boxes you want. Click OK. And it is a Rail-Link, same kind of camera, same username, password. And I've just got a different IP address, which I think is 231. We'll try it and see if it finds it. Yeah, it found it right away. We're going to use the substream just like before. And you see it's going to pop open and try to put it over on this side over here. It's going to ask us what we want for the camera name. And this one is going to be Street View South. And location groups, again, nothing there. IP, CPU, everything there. It's enabled. It's got a schedule if I want to use it. Max frame rate is 10. I don't have resizing turned on. Flip I don't need to do. Rotation I don't need to do. So nothing there. And then the color is going to be a different color so I can see when things happen when it gets motion events. And I'm really kind of pretty much ready, but I can go ahead and go down and check on my record settings. And detect. Raw record stream, that's fine. Date and time, everything here should be the same unless I feel like changing how long it's going to keep something. And then finally we can go and look at storage. And again, this gives a weird name, so we'll give this Street View South. And archiving, I'm not going to turn on. Management, I'm not going to turn on right now. 1024 and 72. And this one I can give it 10 gigs. And this one is good. And we're ready to go. So I'm going to hit OK. And you can see here now, you can see my street view and you can see my camera. And it's overlaying the date and time, but I already have the date and time on the camera. So I could technically go turn one of those off. And these are the names that Rail-Link is adding to the camera setup. So again, you can turn these things off in the Rail-Link app if you want to, and just run them here in the iSpy app. But as you keep adding things, it will build out your grid. And you can basically kind of lay out your grid the way that you want to. So if you remember, we had those grid settings, and we've got grid 0. So that's what I selected. If I want to edit this grid, though, I can go into the editor, which I just clicked on the edit button. I'm going to zoom this out just a little bit to make it easier to see it kind of all at once. And here we can do a column and a grid, or a left, plus main. So let's just look at column and a grid. So here you can see you've got multiple cameras and then one grid over here. So you can kind of set things up like where you're putting special cameras on the left and then a grid of cameras here. And then if we pick this one, you can see that there's all the cameras around the edge, and then you have this middle part where I think you could click on one and kind of see what they look like. So let's do that. So I should get both cameras, I think. Maybe I need to add, oh, that one's going to rotate through. Okay. So if you click, you get to the main view of the camera. And then if you go back to live view, you get back to this view. So this one we could set up, and then instead of having that rotating between those, we could actually go in and just actually click here to add a different camera. So you can go in and really configure this quite a bit. So it has new device. So I think I can drag this out so that I only have the driveway on that one. Yeah, click OK. There we go. Click OK. So now we've got the driveway, and then we've got the street view. And then I could put another view here for another camera that I add. So depending on how many cameras you have, this could be a really useful view. I think it's pretty cool. And then you can kind of have whatever you click on there in the center. So if I click on that one, you see it puts it center. And if I click on this one, it changes it. So this is nice. The iSpy software is really great. The agent is really super useful. I'm kind of enjoying how this works, and I like seeing how you get it set up. Definitely knowing your password for your camera, getting the right RTSP stream set up is going to be important. That was kind of my issue in the beginning, as I was putting in the wrong password. I had to go find my password and get it set correctly. But yeah, this is great. And as I said, if you right click in these areas, you kind of get the editing options for those areas, and you can add another camera by clicking right here for each of these sections and move around. So that's this view. Let's go look at some of these others. The 2 grids, so you could have 2 different grids of cameras that you're looking at. And then we have the alerts, you know, basically, so if anything gets alert or motion, it'll go to the center, I imagine. And so again, you're setting up these cameras in this way to kind of set that up. I think this is kind of a nice view right here. Let's see this one. Now, I don't have this many cameras yet, but eventually I hope to have a few more cameras. I don't know if I'll ever have this many. But I do have 4 total cameras right now, so I can fill up these other slots with the other 2 cameras. And then I've got a way to basically see all 4 cameras and kind of check out one in the middle if I want to, if things are happening, and kind of get that stuff going as well. So super cool. I really like this. This software is really great considering it's open source and able to be self-hosted and run locally like this. Yeah, very nice. So let's go look. I don't know that I have any recordings yet. I just don't. There's no motion happening this morning, sadly. I might go out here in a minute and try to just walk around in front of the camera and create some motion. This is not big enough to basically create any motion for us. If I can get some cars to drive down the street or something, maybe we'll get some motion happening. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see what's going on at least, and I can keep an eye on the yard, basically, you know, in the background there, which is kind of great. You can set up floor plans, which I haven't done yet, so I'm kind of curious what this looks like. You're going to upload an image basically of your property or your home or your building or whatever it is you're covering with your cameras. And then you can basically place where these cameras are on top of that thing. So I may try to get a overview of my house here in a minute, and we'll kind of see if we can place that. I bet I could do it through like Google Maps or something, and we'll get an image. I'll just take a screenshot, and maybe we'll do that here in just a second. So iSpy Agent is pretty great. It has a lot of really cool features. Let me go grab a Google Photos of my house, and then we'll kind of put that on here and see what we can do with placing those cameras on that floor plan. All right, as I'm reading the docs, I'm realizing, okay, if I hold down the Alt key, it actually sets this into a different mode. So I'm going to hold down Alt, and if I hold it and click, there we go. So I got it into edit mode. I should be able to move the cameras now. Yeah, so I'm going to drag these cameras to about where they're at on my house, which is right over here. And they're actually more this way now, but pretty close. And then you can rotate them with the little circle. Oh, the circle makes the range better. The square, yeah, the square lets you rotate where the camera's looking. So yeah, this is about where it's at. Yeah. And then now I can move the other one as well, which faces the driveway, which they're just kind of back to back. And I can, of course, face it more appropriately. Let's see, let's turn it so I can get to the circle first. And then bring that in. It's not quite such a big spread there. But yeah, so you can see that it actually goes out and kind of covers the side of my house here. So now we've got that stuff set, and this of course goes way out here, and it does not cover that big of a arc, unfortunately. It's more like that. But yeah, pretty good. So pretty cool. So this covers, you know, this shows you where your cameras are covering, which is pretty great. And once we've got that set, I think we can just click on the edit button to take it back out of edit mode. Yes. And there we go. So now we see controls here in the bottom left. I'm not sure why I didn't see those to start with. But yeah, there's my video, and you can kind of see that's pretty close to matching what we see there. You know, it's not the widest angle view, but pretty great. And then we can set that right here close to that camera. And the same way with the other view, which just the views all pop up kind of in the same spot, so it doesn't matter too much. But we can always full screen those views as well real quick to see what they look like. And then we can always switch back to the floor plan if we want to kind of get the overview again. So you can pop here. So that's pretty cool. I like that. That's kind of an awesome feature. It took me a second to figure out how to move things around and how to get the controls up. But if you're not seeing the controls, hold the Alt key and then click on the open map somewhere, and you see they disappeared. I'm going to hold the Alt key and click again, and you see they come back, and you get the border around the picture a little bit. And then you can kind of set your cameras where they are. And I'm not sure why that pulsates like that unless it's detecting something. interesting. But they have some great documentation, so I'll link you guys to the docs as well so that you can see that information and understand exactly how everything works there. Yeah, pretty cool. So let's go see if we have any recordings yet. Still no recordings. So I'm going to go out and walk around here in a minute, and I'll try to get some recordings created, and we'll see if we can get some recordings to show up here so you guys can kind of see what's happening there as well. All right, I went out and walked around a little bit. Let's go check our recordings. Yeah, so now I've got a couple of recordings from my different cameras. So you can see here kind of how it lays out. And then you can minimize these sections and maximize these sections. So if you have a lot of cameras, you can get in here and really see what all is here and kind of go choose what you want to look at. So if we look at this one, it's a fairly quick recording. You see it starts playing and it gives you indicators where it saw the most motion, which is pretty nice. So down here on the timeline, you can kind of see like, oh, it sees more motion. And of course, the closer I get, the larger I am, the more screen real estate I take up. And the motion happens. So that's kind of your playback function, which is kind of nice. And again, it's a short clip. It doesn't keep a lot, but you can adjust, I think, how much time this keeps as well. Pretty nice. I really like this. I think iSpy is some great software. Something for you to definitely try out if you're interested in NVR. If you've tried the other ones, you didn't like them. Maybe if you did like them and you're like, maybe I'd like this one better. Just give it a shot. It's free. That's one great thing about it. If you really like it and you want to use it and you want some of the extra features, they do offer that option. It is a paid option, but you know what? That's how they support the open source side of this software. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.